Nah, I got something to prove and I ain't never gonna give up. Plenty of juice and I ain't never gonna waste it. Something to do and I ain't never wanna quit it. So come on, get a little bit, I know you wanna play with it.
Coming to you from Studio Iguana Monk down in the Big Dirty, it's the Twisted Podcast, where we explore what it means to be a working artist living in the real world. Please welcome your hosts, Larry Lines and Troy Winston.
Here we are.
Here we are.
With the Twisted Pop Podcast.
Yes.
In digital or HD. Whatever it is we do here. Whatever it takes.
You moron.
You moron. We are now splitting up our format so that we're doing...
Oh, yeah. We are doing that.
Because our last couple of interviews run really long when we try to hit everything with I Hate Art and the interview,
right.
The interview at the same time. And I don't like the idea of cutting off the interview or trying to time box everything. And it seems like we just start rushing. So
it's also really convenient because Michael Stovall canceled this week and is rescheduling for when?
For Monday. So
Monday.
But it would still be another, I guess. Be August
same time,
28th or something like, or 26th or 7th. I don't know. Some date that it would come out. So this one, hopefully it comes out midweek. So we'll end up with 2 podcasts a week.
So we're doing midweek and then a weekend release.
Yes.
Okay.
So there will be one of these where we just talk about stuff.
Well, we have a plan.
Yes, we have a plan. I don't necessarily know what the plan is around the topics that we'll go through. I think that that'll evolve as we move along.
Well, we'll move right into I Hate Art then.
Yep, there we go.
Do you want a bumper on that?
No, we're good. We're just going to cut right into it, and I'll cut it with music.
Okay.
I hate art. Art is stupid. Art is boring. A-R-T-T art.
Yeah. Okay, so what do you got? What do you got today?
Oh, me?
Yeah.
First?
Oh, you want me to? You want me to go first?
Go first. Yeah.
Okay. We've actually talked about this before, so I started looking up art movements, and obscure art movements is what I typed into Google, if truth be known, because really, it's just a conversation starter, and I know you have a lot to say about this particular subject,
I hope so.
Which is Yellowism.
Yellowism. I'm unfamiliar with this movement.
No, you'll know when I tell you the term. It's the one with the graffiti art.
Oh, okay.
The graffiti over Picasso's, and in the first place that they hit was the London Museum.
Those kids are calling it?
Yeah, there's 2 people, according to the article I found, and I think long enough ago.
I do remember reading something about.
Yeah, there were like 2 guys, and they did Yellowism, and this was their thing. I can actually look it up, as we're talking.
Yeah.
But the idea is that
so this is the new movement of graffiti, not like the 70s forward.
No, this is the 2000s when somebody tagged the
call it what you will, Yellowism.
They tagged the London Museum. It was a Rothko piece.
Yeah.
And if you get into the actual the movement, the thing that they actually say about what Yellowism is, you don't have to have a concept, because all other art movements are about a movement and a concept, but everything else in the world is Yellowism. So everything else. So that's kind of okay. I'll read what you hit on the first definition of Yellowism. Yellowism is an autonomous phenomenon in contemporary visual culture. It derived from the visual arts, and despite this fact is not classified as art, what is in accordance with its essence. It was defined in 2010 by Marcin Lodaiga and Vladimir Umanets. And the first thing that they did was tag the Rothko and the London thing. And then you talk about this Picasso that got tagged in the Menil.
Yeah.
So anyway, I'm just bringing up that subject and your ideas on it because I know we've talked about it previously. And it was so, I know the thing that you were talking about was the director of the Menil at the time and her reaction to
yes,
this Picasso.
It was a smart reaction, and the topic kind of will be a good segue into my topic. This topic will be a good segue into my topic, but she had a good reaction, and I'll be paraphrasing because I don't have the article. Is that I expected the establishment to really knock this, like form a movement, right? And but she didn't. I mean, she was just like, this is a tragedy. However, I understand the movement, which completely, they're up with the times. And it was just recently, in the last, I don't know, maybe 10 years, that museums have really figured out that they're like 20, 30, sometimes 50 years behind the times now with like collecting current art. And it seemed that she was like really up with the movements that are going on and that she really understood it.
So wait, like, to elaborate on that, because I think that's probably the whole point of the Yellowism that I really hadn't really caught on to, was that their admission that that a lot of these museums and collections are 20, 30, 40 years behind the times because of their collection.
Yeah.
This is because those collections are clogged. Like, they have so much shit at this point, and there's so much more art.
I read it as the other way around.
Really?
Yeah, I read it as a lack, like a deficit. Like they weren't up on this because, well, okay, but that could be a good point also, is that it might not be just one problem, right? I'm sure that is a problem, is that how much art can you collect? And then the other, how much are you interested in collecting? And is it worth collecting? So that statement was, now these fine arts museums all over the country have to go out and find this art. And I think they're doing a pretty good job of it, going out and finding the new art movements and those past 20, 30, sometimes 50 years behind the times. Yeah, that's, I'm gonna choke on my own vavas on that, but going back to her statement though, was that she understood the movement and that all the art that's in institutions, it's all acquisitioned, it's all owned. The people don't own this art, and
mean the collection doesn't own the art? Is that what you're saying?
Well, like people don't own art. You know what I'm saying? Like, as a mass, it's an elitist.
It's an institution, or the very rich.
Institutionalized, like ivory tower.
Yeah.
Rich man's game to own art. We don't own art at this level. That's a good question of whether we should or not be. What were the collectors? The couple.
Oh, I can't remember the name. I'll look it up as we're talking about it.
The couple that spent their life, because they don't have children and dogs, like collecting art, and one of their statements on one of their favorite artists was they showed up and they saw the prices, and the prices were too high, and they went, "Oh man, we're too late." We're too late. But then the artists knew them so well. They were renowned at this point. And they went, "No, let us do something for your collection."
Herbert and Dorothy Vogel.
That's right. The Vogels like collection it, but then in the end, I mean, they had to just donate it all to like a museum, and then the museum dedicated a whole new
collection to it. Yeah.
So I mean,
it's not like that. Well, all they had was the asset. They didn't have the trust that cared for it into perpetuity.
So as artists, I mean, at this level, and trying to be recognized, the Yellowist movement might be smart. It's definitely destructive, iconoclastic, if not anything else, I mean, you can take the power of it by walking up and spray painting it, by writing your your little stencil on it, and then ripping the sticker off like in the video. It's troubling. I mean, it's troubling, and I could see that she was at pains in the article to like really kind of make that right, as the current,
to be okay with that.
Yeah, I mean, but she had a really educated like point of view, and it was very smart, and I mean, did not expect
these two guys that started this movement, right?
Yeah.
I mean, regardless of what you say about the movement, it's a movement that is now like got its footnote in history.
Yeah, it's an older move.
Yeah, I know it started back.
On it.
Put a name on it. Whatever.
The French have been throwing acid at the conspirators for how long? I mean, like
yeah, that's true.
Someone will wander in and throw acid at that piece like every once in a while. It's just a crazy statement, but
it's true.
And as far as graffiti is concerned, I remember writing a paper on it, and we had to pick two art movements where we thought they were going to be, and I did pick graffiti, even though I wasn't in the movement. I mean, I was just going around spray painting stuff, and I really didn't have like any kind of connection in the 80s to the movement, because they're really, as far as I was concerned, here in Houston, I mean, there was no movement of graffiti. You
tag stuff
or put a sticker on a cop car.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
that was it. So
stickerism.
I remember writing a paper on it and thinking that that this was going to be like a big movement in the future, and I was wrong in my assessment on where I thought it was going to be, and I that goes back to a little bit earlier episode of I Hate Art about the misbranding of it.
Oh, the misbranding of it. Yes.
It's like the gate is open to a few, but then the rest of them will get cut out as vandals.
It's true.
And it doesn't matter how talented they are. And it's kind of folksy. I mean, it's kind of folk arty. Like, people are really, and some of these artists are really trying to figure out like what their style is, and there's no real education behind it. They just go out and write, which is cool. I mean, I live right next to the trains, and I get to see this stuff like every day, and I think, Viva la Fob, whoever he
What is that thing that on the train track over 45, like right downtown? There's that
Be Someone.
Be Someone.
It's they used that in an ad, and have you seen this?
No, I haven't.
Yeah, like they used it. I saw it on the back of taxi cabs, and I saw it in some other ads where they took a picture of it and used it in an ad. And as soon as the ad came out, someone defaced it. so they either had to go back and do it secretly, or did the city commission them to do it?
Yeah. Well, I didn't think you were going to say defaced it. I thought you were going to say immediately there was like a couple of kids that were claiming responsibility for it, that wanted it checked.
Maybe I'm not abreast to it. I'm just a public
you
consumer.
Just saw it. Yeah. Yeah. I'll have to find the ad too.
As public art, though, my opinion is like, I think yes, I'm for it.
Yeah. And that makes sense. I mean, and even something like that, like all it is letters. They're not even pretty letters or anything, but they've been there a long time now.
Typography, I think, has gone, way over the top here, where it's such an ancient art form and you don't have to use it anymore. I think, graffiti has pushed typography like some artists predict that it should be pushed, and I still love designing things with type, and as far as that goes, I think it's a great movement.
Huh.
And
interesting.
You?
What with the yellow? I mean, I'm for it. I mean, I'm for it if it starts a discussion that lasts this long. I mean, like in regardless of how I feel about defacing a piece of art, right? Like it's because it is troubling, right? You end up with this idea, like you go into the Menil over and over and over again. I know what painting we're talking about, right? And then it gets tagged, and you're like, oh, and then you go, why is that troubling, right? Now you're thinking about the piece of art in a different way, right? And it's I mean, that's worth it alone.
Yeah.
If you are now thinking about something in a different way, and you're also thinking about sort of the elitism that we're acknowledging by art coming up into mass education, right?
Yeah.
So if you think of the types of problems that we have paying for college right now, a lot of it is just because they have the thing that everybody wants, right? You go, everybody should go to college, so we're going to charge for it. And then we don't think of trades and sort of pushing people toward trades anymore. And this is like, other people are having that part of the discussion about trades and whatnot. But if you actually extend this into art, then how many people were getting art degrees in 1880?
Right.
And what kind of person was getting an art degree in 1880? Did this actually exist, or was it just a salon of educated people who were just like painting?
Right.
Like it wasn't like, I'm going to get a degree in art because I love art, something like that. It was just people that had that kind of resources, those kind of resources, were able to, at their leisure, explore art like this, right? So if you're sitting there, if you're talking about Picasso or Monet or any number of the people that we think of as the greats, how many of those of that kind of talent are now, right, not being able to develop because they don't have the resources to sit around and think about it, and there are so many. I mean, that's what happens. We're talking about this all the time.
Yeah,
is your margins on any product go down as soon as you put it out, and they're expected to shrink.
Yeah.
So this happens to artists. So if you have an agent, the agent doesn't get anything anymore from representing Picasso. They don't go, hey, I'm representing Picasso, I'm going to put all of my resources into representing Picasso or something like that. They're going to lose Picasso. They're going to be a free agent, and somebody with more resources is going to come along and take their stuff.
Yeah.
What an agent has now is diversity. And if they are only pushing one product, then their margins are going to close on them, and they're going to lose their main clientele, right?
Yeah.
And their main people that they're representing. So now what we have is that you get everybody has stuff on, hey, you do me a favor now and then I'll do you a favor later. But that next favor is long time coming, because what they're really trying to do is increase their own margin, and the way they do that is by getting lots and lots of talented people to do projects.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's a theory, but when you look at all this, like across all of that, and then you say, how am I supposed to get recognized when I'm one of this year?
Holy crap! I mean, that no joke. I'm just baffled at, like, every time I log into my Deviant account or my Instagram account, and I'm new to Instagram. I'm like, what would start doing Instagram about
6 months ago?
Well, I mean, a little bit longer than that, but
we really hadn't played it up much.
Yeah, and then, so, I don't know, within 6-8 months, I've gone through and I've picked artists that I like. I've sought artists, and then other artists pop up, and I follow their stuff, and it is just a vast amount of incredible talent that is out there. I just shake my head like every single time I go on to like Instagram and just start, fidgeting like through the rows and rows, and then just pick on somebody and like look at their portfolio of just endless stuff. Every time I look in that light, it's like
you're blinded. Don't look over there.
I can't. But it's like every time I look into their portfolio, I'm just constantly like this, flipping through it. And
the way I feel about music, and just the musicians that I went to school with that I've had this conversation with, is that there's a lot of potential, but no one's given enough time to develop.
It's so bizarre. I mean, yeah.
And I don't know if that's the same for art.
It's just, we've crossed this several
Okay.
times in our conversations that I don't think there's any difference when it comes to writing, doing art, or music, right? Or being a comedian for that, or an actor or anything like that. I mean, there's an incredible amount of rejection no matter what field you choose to be in. But let's go let's say two times that for like any of the arts. And then like I think the only real difference is it's probably harder to be a writer, because like with art you can at least hang stuff on a wall or write on a wall or do graffiti.
You've got to make somebody. That's right. We were talking to Ryan about this. You got to make somebody write that or read the damn thing.
So you can't make them read it.
Yeah.
But you can make them look at art, and you can get on a stage and herd some cats for a minute, and make them hear your music. But writing, you can't make anybody read.
No, you can't make anybody read. We wouldn't have a literacy problem.
You really have to be involved in reading.
There'd be no reading rainbow.
No. we would have that problem solved. Anyway, you finish your thought on that, like the vast amount.
There's so much work, right? So if you think of Yellowism in that term, right? You go, here's somebody that's got, like, let's say for instance, this art, one of the two of them, had a lot of art, and none of it's being recognized, or even if it is, just slightly. And then you just go, oh, I'm going to tag a Picasso. Now, now you've put your mark on something. Mm-hmm. Maybe it's a troubling mark, and you've done all of that. But how do you distinguish yourself from the number of people that can afford an art degree now?
Well, one way is destroying art, and in art history, I mean that they used to do it, and take the power out of it by destroying it. When you attack a temple and there's their god, you smash its eyes out.
That's true.
So I mean, there's a whole term in art history of this, like a whole study of it too, where you just destroy that god and remove its power. That's how you do that.
Well, there you go. So what was yours?
Well, a whole new art segment, right? I've been trying to form this into like a topic and not so much like a question. It started out with a question, and I hear it a lot where people will approach musicians, writers, artists, actors, comedians, and when I say art or artists in this segment, I'm definitely putting in quote and including them all, not just the way that I speak in visual art terms. But you hear this question a lot. Where do you feel art plays a part in current times, or what do you think the role of an artist is currently? And I don't think I don't think it's a very good question for artists. I think it's a question that people ask artists for people who don't understand art, or who love art, not understand, but don't have any other way to frame it.
Yes.
But the simplest terms, and not that it's not an.
We would get our generic
right.
layman in here and ask him the question.
Right.
So you know nothing about anything in art world,
right?
Right. What do you think of art?
Right.
That's.
And then the step up there is where do you think? What do you think the role is? What do you think the importance is of art in current times? And it was a decent enough question for me to spring off into what I'm thinking. And we have definitely, I don't know if we've purposely done this, but we have definitely dialed back our political stances in this podcast, right? We have definitely not touched a lot of politics, either on purpose because we know each other's politics, and
there's only one thing that's more ubiquitous than art right now, and it's politics. Right. And I don't want to fucking talk about it. That's
totally. We talk about it enough.
Yeah.
But framing the question, I'm trying to figure this out again. Hold on.
All right.
we know that art plays an important part. Otherwise, we wouldn't have a whole show dedicated to it. So we don't have to go down that road personally. I mean, we may go down that road with people who aren't artists on this podcast because they're just storytellers. But you and I don't have to do that, and then we don't have to talk about politics because we talk about it enough. But then, so keeping that in the frame of mind, at one point, and we both know what we were involved in, like in the early 90s, late 80s, early 90s. At one point, one of these revolutionary figureheads really blunted the question of you're either going to be part of the revolution or you're going to paint it. Right? And as kind of a cornering, like, what are you going to do kind of thing, right? And currently, right. Well, I thought that was a kind of a shitty way to put it, to corner people. Right?
Oh yeah,
right. Because
I think I know who you're talking about, but it was a shitty way of doing it. But there was also a shitty way. It was habitual putting people in that.
That's right, putting you in that corner and forcing you to like make a decision.
Yeah, you're with me or you're against me. And you had such creative ways of saying you're with me or you're
against me. Which was odd, like coming from that generation of like who they were with, right? Because seeing that in the '60s, that's what you did as an artist. You picked up a guitar, you picked up a paintbrush, and if that was the only way that you could fight, like and make a statement, then that's what you did. You wrote a book about it. You wrote a song about it. You formed a band around it. You painted a piece of canvas about it. And so, I think that was basically. I think I remember hearing an interview with Mick Jagger saying, that's what you did. You're like, yeah. And I think that's probably what Street Fighting Man is about.
Yeah.
Right? Is that, what's a poor boy to do here? Yeah. And so, where or better yet, what would a new art movement look like?
What would, that's funny in terms
based in these terms and like current writing.
Man, it's so hard to talk about it without starting to talk about politics.
I know. So
you just put me in the corner, right? You put us in a corner about that because.
Well, I think it's important
because even if you say, well, it shouldn't be politically motivated, you've taken a political stand, right?
No, I don't know about that. I don't know.
Yeah,
What would it look like? I mean, what would it look like?
I don't know. It's very difficult right now because there's so much irony. There's so many people, lampooning current events.
Because right now it looks like memes.
Yeah, yeah.
To me, which is just horrible.
And Johnny Bodman said this in his interview too, where he was like, "You just keep consuming stuff, and you go, oh, I just looked at that for 20 seconds. Right. Now I'm on to the next thing." Like I was noticing this today, reading articles. Right, like you just go, "Oh, here's somebody that knows how to write a journalistic article. Mm-hmm. Let me skip the 5 paragraphs that explain what happened, and we'll get to the point."
Yeah.
Right, and then I read the 3 sentences that mean something, or that justify the title, right, of the article.
Yeah, I did the same thing.
Yeah, now you're done, and it's it feels it feels awful, really. Mm-hmm. Like if you've done that like for an hour, like by the end of it, you're just like, I don't feel like I've gotten anywhere. And then with the art movements, I feel like there's a cursory approach to everything. Like so what is a new art movement? What is something that's striking enough? Like what does it look like? That's a really difficult question. I mean, if we could invent it right now, we're just like come up with blueism, counteract the yellowism, right?
Right.
And then how do you start designing something like that, and designing a movement? I don't know. Like there are people already defacing the old guy stuff, and then punk was already done, so you can't just go, well, I'm talentless, and here's a dot, and here's some fucking shit thrown at a wall, and here's people who can't play their instruments screaming at you and jumping on your head. I mean, so you have all the outrageous movements, like they've gone somewhere and they've sort of run their course. What does it mean when you have a, now, like, and how do you get that attention? Is it the quiet person that gets the most attention in a loud room? I mean, that's I used to be, that's the way we would talk about it. Like, you say very little and then you get, and I have experience with this because I didn't talk very much until I was like 23. I'd say something and the whole room would shut up, right?
Yeah,
so you do some kind of quiet, thoughtful thing, and then people recognize it. They're just like, there's even been the guys, like, they put famous violin players in the subway, and then people walk by them and they film it for a couple hours. And people, they can't recognize that something is happening.
Right.
Like, you have to be told that something is happening.
Right.
I don't know. It seems confusing. It almost seems like why we're doing this podcast. Because if you were to say what's the root of why we're doing this, it's because there's so many people in isolation doing so many things, and that even goes back to the blog. The original thing about the blog is that there's all these indie musicians and no one was really listening to each other. They were going, "It's great, you're an indie musician." No, and it's still that way.
Yeah.
Like, we're all just sort of shouting at each other and going, your stuff is really cool. And then you think about yourself and you go, why isn't anybody listening to my stuff? Because I don't really care about anybody else's stuff, right? And this is, in this particular thing, I started when we were talking about doing this podcast and interviewing artists, like creative people.
Yeah.
You go, I acknowledge somebody else is out there doing something.
Right.
That wasn't something that we said.
Right.
But it is sort of the design of the interview, like the interview part of the podcast. If we have somebody on and you go, you have accomplished something significant. If maybe not significant enough to get a Wikipedia entry, right? Or be taught in art history classes in 50 years.
Right.
But you've busted your ass, and it's for me, it's worth acknowledging that you exist.
Right. There's so many people out there that are just doing art, and even though, I pick and choose who I like, it's just like, what am I missing? I would have no idea because it's deep.
Yeah.
It's a deep plunge of like trying to find and there's plenty of people. I find new shit like every day if I go look. New music, new art, new things to be read. New performances like every day. It's incredible. It's deep.
Yeah, and then on top of that, one of the things that's said often in the indie film industry is that you're no longer competing against your peers. You're competing against every film that was ever made.
Right.
And because your distribution deal as an indie film artist, even if you win a festival, right? Like, the best you could hope for is that you're going straight to Netflix,
right?
Which is great.
Yeah.
I mean, they pay well,
yeah.
And they're generous about what they're doing right now. I don't know what will happen in the future when this $20 billion debt comes, to roost.
Knocking at the door, right?
Yeah, but they have to pay for all this shit. But I'll take it. Like, if I were to make a movie and sell it, period.
Yeah.
Like, that's great.
Yeah.
But once it goes on Netflix, then the judgment starts. It's about who's watching it, like, and how many people have watched it.
Yeah.
But when I go to Netflix, I can guarantee that you're competing with every movie that's there. And if Dog Day Afternoon just happens to pop up in my feed, right, I might watch it for the 6th or 7th time.
Right.
And that's hard to say, that you're competing with just that one movie, but you're competing with everything that was ever made. And Netflix promotes some of that, every time. They go, hey, we own this part of the library. And then when Hulu used to have the Criterion Collection, which is, they they select all of the great movies of all time. And,
Yeah.
I mean, some of them are shit, right? Like they're just like somebody filming a party,
Yeah.
and you're like, that's great, the '60s in France
Yeah.
or something. But there's a lot of really great movies on there, and all of the filmmakers respect it. So you're going on Hulu, and now that you have free access to the Criterion Collection, and then the first thing you're like, oh, I can go in the Criterion Collection, just select a movie.
Yeah.
So now you're in there, right? And I think that may be why Hulu decided not to give everybody access to the Criterion Collection, because they're paying for content. And why would you do that if like all they're doing is going there for the Criterion Collection?
Right.
But I mean, this is all about like what is a movement, right?
Yeah.
What is a movement? I don't know. Like the movement now, like if we were to define it right now, it's I found something that people like, and I'm going to sell it again.
Yeah.
I'll make it again.
Yeah, I mean, well, I mean, right, and you also have like the whole world to compete with now.
Mm-hmm.
That camera went off. It's doing something. Movie recording has been stopped automatically.
That's good.
Yeah, I mean, you're competing with the whole world now, and that would be.
I think that it only allows a certain size. So I don't know. Maybe I don't have anything.
Maybe. That would be my bid for the movement is to name the movement worldwide.
The worldwide art movement.
Worldwide wrestling.
like if you you have an art show and then you're like qualifications for submission is being willing to go a couple rounds against your fellow artists.
Yeah, for sure.
And at the end of it, you get a belt.
I'm going to put my bid in now for that worldwide wrestling movement and art. The art movement of worldwide wrestling.
It's like, that motherfucker's going down. His shit sucks.
Sounds like a reality show. Yeah.
Yeah, so I
ran out of steam on that.
Yeah, I can't really think of another, like what the movement would be, what you would call it, like what its characteristics.
The classification would be difficult. It would definitely be difficult unless you were to go out and dub it the yellowest.
Yeah, well, part of a lot of the movements too, if you really were to take it seriously, is that you have to focus on one particular thing. You just pick it, right? And whether it's the yellowists tagging Picasso's, right? Then you've certainly made a name for yourself by doing it, and that makes sense with everything that you do.
Sure.
So I go, all right. Well, I'm going to draw musical instruments with cubes or rectangles.
Makes me wonder if it's like during this period, they're going to call it like whatever postmodernism movement or in my case, my bit is the worldwide wrestling of art. Then it would be subclass.
The Worldwide Artist Federation.
Totally, it'd be subclassified under the archivists. Who are archiving and documenting. So then you'd have juxtapose, and you'd have beautiful decay, and you'd have deviant art, and you'd have the Google collection, and you'd have like whoever's documenting all the comic book art. It'd be the Marvel collection.
Yep.
Or the Marvel movement, the DC movement. The
Google my gosh! Movement. When you really think about all this stuff, and you think about the archiving of anything and like the nostalgia movement based on any of these things, the coffee table book, it's like it's too big to exist anymore.
Right.
Like, what do I do with this?
Well, you have to log into that archive with your password and username, and go look at those.
You can spend the rest of your life looking at Marvel backstage shots.
Yeah, totally. the Marvel movement.
Huh.
Planet Starbucks.
Planet Starbucks, that's right. We'll go through the whole thing. The GE constellation. Yeah.
This may be another I hate art, and prematurely. But what public domain movie have you watched recently?
Oh, Reefer Madness.
Reefer Madness, that's right. You told me that.
And you know, this is the stuff that's gonna frame Chasm, which is the movie we shot.
Ah, nice.
So that's all
good.
the stuff I'm starting to put together with this. You know, the idea is that you'd be flipping through channels and seeing a bunch of public domain movies, framing this movie that we made. That is, you know, for whatever it's worth.
Yeah.
The scenes seem to be well shot, but there, you know, it's really interesting to see like a lot of the what Reefer Madness in itself, right? Because it's got a lot in it. Like it's got it. We talked about it. I've never watched it. That's the first time I've watched it. It was the other night.
What was the date on that?
It was the 32 to 36, I think, was the actual.
Yeah.
They don't know particularly, or that was the time that it was being toured around.
Ah.
I can't remember which it was.
Is that the era of the movement that film movement that had to have a moral ending? If you were gonna like,
I don't know about that because
delinquency and crime and drugs and crime,
and drugs. Yeah, it seems like it. I mean, I don't really know, but it's the thing that was told to us when it was rediscovered in the 70s, and we grew up with that sort of mythology. Yeah, was that it was a government propaganda film. Right. But if you read about it, it wasn't. It wasn't a government propaganda. Really, it was just this a private company doing the movie and sort of doing an exploitation of fear, and they got a lot of money out of it. Yeah. Well, maybe not a lot of money, but they were able to tour with it and scare a lot of people, right? That kind of idea. Yeah. Because nobody really knew a whole lot about reefer madness or reefer or marijuana at the time. It was funny to see the marijuana word spelled out with an H instead of a J. Juana. Marijuana. Yeah. But, you know, all of that aside, I don't really think that the things that are striking about Reefer Madness are not...
Wow, that's so funny.
It is funny. I laughed when I saw it, marijuana. So, when I was watching the movie, the reefer is not the interesting thing about it. The interesting thing about it is, like the
behavior, the
actual acted behavior. Yeah, yeah. Not even while they're high. Right. But this sort of like
giggly, fucking like maddening giggles, and isn't there a scene where they just can't stop dancing?
Yeah, they're kind of. They're just everybody's dancing. Like every time everybody
just gets up and starts dancing.
Yeah, like you've ever seen anybody do that. Right. I want to dance! I'm so high!
I didn't know a guy that smoked weed and that's all he wanted to do was go play basketball. He'd get all hopped up to play basketball.
You knew a guy that wanted...
Yeah! That's all he wanted to do. After he smoked weed, he didn't want to chill out. He just wanted to go play basketball.
Most of it reminded me of people that we know when they hit manic episodes. Right. Like the actual look in their face, and you know, they're like, oh my god, you know,
like meth,
or even drug free, right? Like just completely drug free. I don't even think it didn't really have a relationship to drugs at all to me. It was just they're sort of these classic madness scenes that don't make any sense. But
oh man.
Anyway, I'm gonna frame up some of those scenes to be channel surfed with scenes from Chasm, and I'm gonna find some other things.
Yeah, I watched Gulliver's Travels.
So that's in the public domain. That's good to know. I will watch that next.
That one's so strange. I mean, it mimics Walt Disney.
No kidding.
1939 like movie, right? Like as a movie, but then some of the animation is just so bizarre.
So this is the animated Gulliver's Travels from like 1939.
Yeah.
And it's Disney or it's not?
No, it's not Disney.
Because nothing Disney has is in the public domain.
Yeah,
unless they made a mistake and they murdered those people.
Well, yeah, or you have to go into hiding. Like, what's his name? I forget who did, who redid Mickey Mouse.
Oh, yeah, all right.
And then dubbed the new mouse, that CIA mouse.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
What that dude's name is, I forget. But it's like, it's in the spirit of like Walt Disney-esque kind of movies, and just some of the animation is just so bizarre, and some of it is just so good. And they have like these over-caricatured, like, animated characters, and then they have these two Romeo and Juliet type characters that are just human.
Human? That's funny.
Human. It's funny. But the singing is beautiful. The art's great.
So are there any particular scenes that stand out?
Just these weird kind of almost rotoscoped, like Gulliver, like his lumbering onto the beach and his walking and his talking, and it's I don't know how they managed that, but. There's some classic moments, that always remind me of elementary school. There's a giant on the beach. There's a giant on the beach. That kind of thing. And the music is like way over the top. If I was to pick out like a single flaw, there's this solo that the princess does at the kind of beginning of the movie, where they're choosing whether to what the wedding song. The kings end up fighting over what the wedding song is, whether it's Faithful or Forever.
Oh.
And then at the end they of course combine the song because it's kind of the same tempo and it kind of blends well together. But there's this scene where her opening song and her face is just animated all over the place. It's just moving, and like her eyes are like splitting apart, and like they just could not get her facial structure down at all on that part, and it's just like blah, blah. It's so bizarre to watch nowadays.
But they didn't even really have a render engine at the time. It was just like they were having problems with like acetate.
But it seemed like Gulliver was almost rotoscoped into the whole thing.
Huh.
It's so bizarre, man.
Huh.
But then there's these spy characters from Bombado's like kingdom that are just classic, like little Weasley assassins. Oh, they're so good.
That's awesome. All right, well, that's going to be like the next one that I go for.
Awesome.
Because I got to find. That sounds like scenes that I would like to put in the channel.
No, I'll watch Reefer Madness again, or Reefer Madness. I don't know what movie I was looking for. Yeah.
Anyway, I think that's good. I think we hit it.
Thank you for listening to the Twisted Podcast. For show notes, go to twistedpop.com/twistedpodcast. Merchandise at bigmyth.com. That's big-mith.com. In association with nquit.com. Until next time, this is the Twisted Podcast.